Hey guys, welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Becca and today I'm going to be talking about my anticipated releases for the rest of 2021. So I don't make a whole ton of anticipated releases. I don't super keep on top of new releases. The ones that I mainly focus on are ones by authors that I'm already familiar with and really enjoy, and ones that are in series that I have already started. So that's the kind of thing that you're going to see throughout this video. I'm not very good on keeping top of debuts, and I do tend to wait a lot of the time, unless the synopsis is particularly striking, until I've seen reviews before I go out and purchase like debut books. So we have 12 books in total to talk about today, and I'm just going to get straight into it. So the first of my anticipated releases is the only summer release that we have in this video. It's the only book that I'm excited for that is released before September, and it is also the only book that I'm anticipating that I have no like grounding for. Like, it's not part of a series that I want to read, it's not by an author that I've read from before, and that one is Starrita by Kirsten Hall. So I stumbled across this one accidentally on Twitter, and it is being marketed as Cannibal Nuns, so it's giving me a lot of the same vibes as like the Book of the Ancestor series by Mark Lawrence. So the synopsis on this one is quite vague, but we are following a main character who is part of a convent that have pretty gruesome day-to-day duties, and apparently she's trying to avoid getting pregnant as much as she possibly can, because something to do with the system of being in this convent is preserving the magical bloodline of the sisters. So when a shadowy cabal approaches and offers the main character a way out, she takes it, and this gives her the access to the highest reaches of the sisterhood, including things like opulent parties. So the synopsis for this one is only 2 paragraphs. I don't really know what to expect with this one, but Cannibal Nuns sold me, and then the synopsis has me further intrigued. The next of my anticipated releases is actually out on the 7th of September, and that is Empire of the Vampire by J. Kristoff. I've been anticipating this one for a while. J. Kristoff can be hit or miss with me. Some of his stuff I really loved, and some of it like I've just recently DNF'd pretty much, his Lifelike series. But Empire of the Vampire is his brand new adult release, first book in a series, and it follows this guy who is a vampire. Apparently it's not like sparkly vampires, it's not romantic vampires. The Nevernight series is grimdark, and I think Empire of the Vampire is going to go down a similar route, but that is literally all I know about it, because I knew as soon as it was released I was going to pick it up, and I'm very excited about it, especially as vampires seem to be having a little bit of a resurgence over the last couple of years. On I think the 28th of September we have The Last Graduate by Naomi Novik. This is the sequel to Deadly Education. So this is the second book in the Scholomance series, which takes place in this deadly magic school that is full of monsters, and we are following a main character called Elle, who is very standoffish, who is trying to secure an alliance so that she can graduate from the school when the time comes, because to get out of this school you have to fight your way through a hall full of monsters. So I gave Deadly Education 3 stars. I actually really enjoyed it, but the things I didn't like about it were quite significant, like enough to pull it down to a 3-star average. So I really loved the main character of Elle, and I really related to her as a biracial main character with particular circumstances in her life that are very similar to mine, and also the way that she treats people because of how she has been treated in the past. However, I really didn't like the world building in here. It was endless exposition, and it was very much in a telling and not showing manner, where in the middle of a paragraph like Elle would be doing something and it would just cut to this like historical story that would illustrate the point that Elle was currently trying to make. And in terms of world building, it is really not my preference, and I really didn't enjoy that, but my overall feelings coming out of the book were positive, so I'm very excited for The Last Graduate. Also on the 28th of September we have Vespertine by Margaret Rogerson. Margaret Rogerson has written 2 books previously, both of them young adult standalones. I have read An Enchantment of Ravens, but I have not yet read A Sorcery of Thorns, but I do think I'm going to really love that one as well. Vespertine is the first book in a brand new series that she's writing. She's never written a series before, and it follows a young woman called Artemisia who is training to be a Grey Sister. The Grey Sisters are nuns, and their job is to cleanse the spirits of the dead so that they can move on and don't come back as vengeful spirits with a hunger for the living. amazing. I absolutely love Margaret Rogerson covers. They are all illustrated by Charlie Bowalter. They are absolutely stunning, and I am so excited to get my hands on a copy of this. I do really want to read Sorcery of Thorns as well, as I've mentioned, so I may try and do that before Vespertine's release, because otherwise I know I'm going to end up with it and then not read it for quite some time, because I like to read things in publication order where I can, even if it's not relevant. On the 30th of September, we have Frostheart 3 by Jamie Littler. This one is the final book in a middle grade series that follows a young boy called Ash who lives in this snowy landscape where there are monsters in the snow. Because of this, there are lots of isolated strongholds in this world, and Ash lives in one of those, but he does have the power to be able to communicate with monsters through the power of music and singing, which is something that is very much frowned upon because they believe people with this ability can be manipulated by the monsters to do harm to the community. So when the people of Ash's stronghold discover he has these abilities, they cast him out and he finds refuge on a snow sleigh where he sets out to find his parents, who were also pathfinders that used to travel between the strongholds, and they left a few years ago and never actually returned for him. So this is a very cute, very sweet middle grade series. It is a little bit more action based than I generally tend to enjoy, but it does have a lot of heartwarming moments. So I'm really excited to see how this series is going to come to its conclusion, and it also has really beautiful illustrations as well, which is another of my favorite things about it. We have two for the 5th of October. The first one is Kingdom of the Cursed by Kerri Maniscalco. This one is the sequel to Kingdom of the Wicked, which is a young adult fantasy that follows a young woman called Amelia, and her twin sister has been brutally murdered. They come from a background of witchcraft, and Amelia suspects that her sister may have been dabbling in dark magic, so Amelia herself turns to dark magic in order to try and find the person who murdered her sister, and accidentally summons a prince of hell called Wrath. Now, the first 40% of the first book I didn't super love, but as soon as we got past that mark, I thoroughly enjoyed it, and the ending of the first book took a turn that I really didn't expect, so I am dying to see how that comes together and develops in the sequel, because it just, I really just was not expecting it, and I'm just 10,000 times more intrigued than I was throughout the process of reading the first book to find out where the series is actually going to go. The other one for the 5th of October is Little Thieves by Margaret Owen. I have read The Merciless Crow by Margaret Owen. It did not finish that duology, so that is something else that I need to get on, but I do actually have an e-arc of Little Thieves on NetGalley, so I do hope to be reading it soon. And this one is a young adult fantasy about a princess and her maid. The princess is betrothed to the prince of a faraway kingdom, and she sets off to travel to that kingdom with her maid. However, the wicked maid changes places with the princess, and the princess ends up spending a year living as a servant while the maid ends up living as a princess. However, the princess does return and take her rightful place, and Little Thieves is the story of the maid. I'm really excited because the synopsis of this doesn't really give away what kind of story this is going to be, so I don't know whether it's going to go down the path of people think that the maid is wicked but actually the princess is wicked, or whether the maid is actually wicked and we're going to get the perspective of the bad character of the story. One that I'm hesitantly excited for that's released on the 19th of October is A Shadow in the Ember by Jennifer L. Armentrout. This is the first book in the prequel spin-off from the Blood and Ash series, and I believe it follows some of the old gods of the world. I didn't particularly love the latest installment in the Blood and Ash series, which was Crown of Gilded Bones, and in that book we actually got a lot of information and a lot of like info dumpy kind of showing and not telling segments about the history of the world and the gods, which I kind of wish had been saved for this prequel story. So I'm not entirely sure what the purpose of the prequel series is going to be and what it's mainly going to focus on aside from those characters, but I am gonna read it because the books are addictive. If nothing else, they're really addictive, and I'm hoping that I enjoy the prequel a little bit more than I enjoyed the latest installment of the core series. We also have two for the 2nd of November. The first one is Girls of Fate and Fury by Natasha Nyan. This one is the final installment in the Girls of Paper and Fire series, which is an East Asian inspired story that follows a girl called Lei who ends up being one of the king's paper girls. Now, the world is split into this caste system, so you have demons at the top, humans at the bottom, and in between you have, I think, is it the Steel Cast, which are a mix of human and demon. Lay is a human and she is forced into being one of the king's paper girls, which is essentially a concubine, and while she's there she becomes incredibly attracted to another one of the king's paper girls. So there is a female-female relationship in this. I really like the world and the world building in this series, and in the first book I really enjoyed the chemistry between the two characters that end up being romantically involved. However, I didn't love the second one as much. I think it lost a little bit of what I loved between the characters, but I am still excited to see how this is going to wrap up, and with how much I do enjoy the world and the world building, it's still worth it for me to read this one anyway. The second one for the 2nd of November is Gilded by Marissa Meyer. Marissa Meyer is the author of the Lunar Chronicles and also Heartless. She does have a superhero series as well called Renegades that I haven't read, but the Lunar Chronicles is one of my favorite series. I haven't read it in quite a number of years, but when I read it, I absolutely adored it. So I don't know too much about Gilded, but I do believe it is a Rumpelstiltskin retelling that follows a miller's daughter who was cursed by the god of lies, and because of this she spins tales that are like extremely fantastical and wonderful to listen to, but are entirely untrue. I actually do really want to read the superhero series Renegades that Marissa Meyer wrote, but I really don't like the UK covers. I really do not like the UK paperbacks of Marissa Meyer's books, which is why I haven't picked it up yet. It is something I'm looking into in the future, but she is an author that I do really enjoy, so I'm hoping that I also enjoy Gilded. For the 9th of November we have Aurora's End by J. Kristoff and Amy Kaufman. This is the final book in the Aurora series, is that what it's called? The first book being Aurora Rising. This is a young adult sci-fi space opera that follows a group of people that are fresh out of a space flight academy, and just before their graduation ceremony the leader is going on like a test flight, just honing his skills, when he comes across the wreckage of a, I think is it 100 or 1000 year old spaceship that went missing when it was traveling to the space colonies on its way from Earth. Now this wreckage contains a girl called Aurora who turns up with some crazy abilities that even she didn't know that she had, and she joins the Aurora team, which sends them into this plotline where they're being chased down by like a whole ton of government organizations who are trying to find Aurora. Now the second book in this series I did really enjoy, and I think I know where the third book is going, but all of these books end on kind of really dramatic massive cliffhangers, so I'm really just desperate to get my hands on Aurora's ending to see if I'm right about that plot twist, but also see how the series comes together. Another sci-fi is released on the 25th of November, and that is Cytonic by Brandon Sanderson. This is the latest installment of the Skyward series, which is his young adult sci-fi series. So in this one we are following a young girl called Spencer whose father was in the military. He was a fighter pilot, and Spencer would very much like to follow in his footsteps. However, her father was a deserter, and because of that she is pretty much shunned, and her entire family is shunned as well. So the first book really focuses on the flight academy and Spencer's struggle because of her father being a deserter and trying to prove herself. I thoroughly enjoyed the first book. I didn't like the second book as much, so I am hoping that it is just a case of like second book syndrome and the third book is a lot better. I do adore Brandon Sanderson, but I definitely prefer his Cosmere stuff and also his adult stuff as opposed to his young adult stuff, but there are still a lot of elements of the Skyward series that I do really enjoy. And the final one we have is the 4th installment in one of my favorite series. It does not have a release date, but I do believe it is going to be released in December, and that is Beautiful Nightmares by KJ Sutton. This one is the 4th installment in the Fortuna Swan series, which is a self-published fairy romance that follows a woman called Fortuna Swan whose brother went missing 2 years prior to the start of the story. So Fortuna has been doing pretty much everything she can to find her brother, but he has vanished without a trace, and she is considering giving up when she is approached by a very attractive and powerful fairy male who says that he can take her directly to her brother providing that she marries him. Now the thing that I really love about this series is that it really makes me feel things, and there is a whole ton of pain and sadness in this series, and honestly I am just living for it. But after the events of the third book, which hurt a lot. I really need to see where Beautiful Nightmares is gonna go. I am good friends with the author of this series, so I do know like a few little bits, like I've been let in on a few little hints, but there are still big questions that I have that need answering, and I need this series to stop hurting and give me what I want, which is like, I can't say because spoilers, but I have my fingers crossed that Kelsey's going to come through for me. So there you have it. Those are the 12 books that I am excited for the rest of 2021. I have been asked before where I find out the information for new releases. So I tend to check up on all of the authors that I like, that I think may have new books coming out. I also go to the Goodreads section that says new releases, and it gives you the new releases from any authors that you have already on your Goodreads shelves. And I also go onto NetGalley and have a look at what arcs they have coming up for the next few months when I am making my list. I will say as well that some of the dates on these may be a little bit off, especially with the way that publishing and the pandemic has been making things a little bit delayed, and some things have had to be pushed back. But to the best of my knowledge, this is when these books are going to be released. And as well as that, there is also the possibility that there are more releases that I'm anticipating that I've actually just forgotten about. But down in the comments, please let me know what releases you are anticipating for the rest of the year, and also let me know if there's anything you think that I would be interested in that's being released in the rest of 2021. But aside from that, guys, please don't forget to like this video if you liked it, and subscribe if you wanna. If you head into my description box, you'll find a link to my Goodreads, Instagram and Twitter if you'd like to follow me on any of those, as well as a link to my Bookish candle website, the Instagram for that, and a 10% off discount code. But that's it from me today, guys. Bye!
Oh, you bite your friend like chocolate. You say you're will go where nobody knows, with guns hidden under our petticoats. We're never gonna quit it, no, we're never gonna quit it, no.